Hi Twitch, and welcome back. I'm Abby. I am here with Bryce from Harry's, who's here to talk to me about AWS Fargate. Bryce,
hey, good to be up here.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, thank you for joining me. So first off, can you introduce a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then what Harry's does?
Yeah, so I'm a software engineer at Harry's. I work on our core engineering, core services team. We have a couple of shared services that we use for different functions across the business. And Harry's, we're a men's shaving and grooming brand, but we have a full line of skincare products and so forth. We're both e-commerce, direct-to-consumer at harrys.com, as well as in retailers like Walmart and Target.
Awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about what your infrastructure looks like and how you're using Fargate?
Great, yeah. So one of the services we have on core engineering is a system that just helps us send transactional emails. Like when someone orders, places an order, they want to get like a shipping confirmation email and so on and so forth. So we have an application that manages the integration of our e-commerce systems to all our email vendors that we use.
Because I think you moved your whole messaging workload there. So all of your vendor emails, all of your product messaging goes through there.
Yeah. So this service basically translates like some certain, there's message-specific data that's got to go into each email. So it'll capture that, transform it, validate it, make sure that it's correct, and send that off to the email vendor. We deployed all that out on, originally, it was on ECS without Fargate.
Right.
And then recently we migrated everything over to Fargate to save us a lot of time and energy.
So I guess my first question for all of these are, how did you migrate? Because I think what's coming up for a lot of people now is the same situation that you all were in, which is you started using ECS and then Fargate came along.
Yeah.
How did you end up migrate? Did you switch things over like piece by piece? Did you kind of flip a switch and switch the whole thing?
Yeah. So the migration process, we found out that you could run both regular EC2 nodes and Fargate nodes in the same cluster. That was the key to making this migration process work really well for us. So basically, we were able to stand up equivalent services, containers that were the same on both Fargate and on EC2 at the same time, and then use functionality inside the ALB, the application load balancer, to direct the traffic from the old instances, the old containers to the new containers. When all that was done, we were able to tear down the old containers and all the EC2 nodes with it, and we made a completely downtime-free, seamless migration.
So, had your existing services spun up equivalent services in Fargate mode instead of EC2 mode, and then just kind of seamlessly went over?
Yeah, and it went off without a hitch. It was great.
That's awesome. I have to say also that the pun in this section title is how Harry's shaved off their operational overhead, and honestly, any reason to use a pun, y'all. So I really appreciate that you could make that joke, and I don't think I'd ever be able to stop making it. I think I'd always have to have a pun in there.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, and it's actually true too, because whenever we were using the EC2 nodes, like we weren't running very big containers, so we sort of naively used like very small instances to power the ECS cluster, and we ran into like a bunch of issues, like just for example, doing rolling deploys. If you don't have enough extra memory capacity on those EC2 nodes, then the rolling deploy process will actually take a really long time, because the thing has to go kill a container here, wait till it can find enough space, spin a new one up, and it's not really immediately obvious what's going on with that. We eventually, figured that out and had to add additional capacity. We switched instance types. We were just running bigger instances. I mean, there was more to it, but basically, this was a lot of extra work just to handle one thing that we didn't really want to do. And there's the same story with scaling. With Fargate, we could just scale directly our services. We don't have to worry about all the EC2 nodes that are underneath it like we used to before.
I had this put a really nice way from a customer once, where they said that they worked in currency exchange, and he basically said, anything that I have to do that's not directly related to currency exchange, I don't want to have to think about it. And I think that comes up for a lot of people, right? Is that it's not that you can't do it yourself, it's that all kind of the operational resources and like brain power that's going into doing those things, what if you didn't have to do them? And I think that's really cool. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. That was pretty much our what we were looking for. We have a very small team. There's only 2 people on the team, myself and my colleague. So the less things we had to manage, the better. We just wanted to run our containers, get the emails sent out, and not have to worry about this whole extra infrastructure.
So I have a question from Twitch. CEP21 says, how are your costs on Fargate compared to EC2 reserved instances? Which is an extremely specific question, so thank you, Tweeps.
So to be completely honest with you, I didn't actually go run the numbers and like figure out the costs. Like I said, we have 2 people. We definitely didn't have time to go do a full-on cost analysis. It's not so easy to directly compare because the way that we scale on, because we were able to leverage scaling so much more directly with Fargate that we were not doing prior to this on ECS, our costs don't even have the same kind of dimensions to them. So again, sorry I don't have a better answer for you than that, but
I think that's honestly the same thing that I probably would have done. So I did this, and I was the only operations person when I moved to ECS, and there was no Fargate when I did this. But I think a lot of things that I did on ECS and you don't have to do on Fargate anymore. So it's also like how much of your ops and developers' time is now being able to do something else instead of what you're doing kind of right now, which is not quite a direct comparison like it maybe would have been before. So my question, so this is a personal one from not from Twitch. What's next for y'all? So you started on ECS, you moved to Fargate. What's next?
Yeah, so we're going to continue rolling out new services on Fargate. We have a couple of new services like in the pipeline to be spun up. They're all planning to be on Fargate, and it's following a similar sort of architecture that we laid out on the messaging team. But we're just going to continue to expand. We've already laid a pretty good foundation. Everything's in CloudFormation. So that's been really good for us. We want to start using new kinds of functionality. Like one thing that we'd like to do is we have a couple of background jobs that we have and a couple of one-time tasks that we need to process. So we'd like to exploit like the ECS run task API to define task definitions that just do these one-time, one-off tasks, and then just fire those off whenever we need them because everything's there. The container definition's there, everything that you need, and you can just trigger them on demand when you need them. So I think that'd be pretty cool.
I think what's really cool about stories like that too is that kind of the traditional architecture pattern that you see for containers is always just kind of like the web server one, right? Where I run my server, my Docker container, it stores data somewhere else, but there's so many other cool patterns that you can do. Like you can do batch jobs, you can run things in the background, you can run them in response to other jobs. So there's so many cool things that you can do that aren't kind of beyond the traditional container workloads, which it sounds like Harry's is doing with the batch jobs and the background jobs.
Yeah, we're excited about the flexibility that the container ecosystem on ECS gives us.
So if you're asking about the music, I am not the DJ, unfortunately, but you can play Shazam in the background maybe, and you can figure out which one it is.
Right.
So I see someone asking about migrating ECS containers to Fargate, and actually Bryce spoke about that, right? So he said that they brought them up as kind of their existing services. They started up equivalent services in Fargate mode instead of EC2 mode, and then they kind of seamlessly switched traffic over.
Yeah. I can go into a little more detail if you want.
I would love more detail, because I think that's probably the first big thing that's coming up for people is, I'm using something else, and how do I use this?
Yeah. I think the secret to the seamless migration on Fargate for us was leveraging specific features that ALB provides. In particular, it's the listener rules and the target groups. So you can spin up equivalent services like ECS service definitions, but you want separate target groups in your ALB and separate listener rules for those target groups in your ALB. The ALB lets you have priority rules set for those things. So the key is to have them equivalent and then switch the priority rules, and then all the traffic will flow to the new thing, and then you can tear everything down without affecting what's actually running. So when you go through that process, then you can keep everything live. You won't drop any connections. It was great. We had literally no downtime.
Zero
during that
downtime,
process.
Just kind of rolled over and came up in a new mode.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Bryce, we are just about out of time. The stream is not stopping, but we're bringing a new guest on. So Bryce, thank you for joining me. It's been awesome. And next up, we're going to have Jem from Kia, who's joining us right now.